Okay, we're entering part 3 here on the Irish origins of civilization. This is chapter 10, and we're looking at the disciples of Horus. And we just got through talking about how they say that Osiris himself, or a seer, Wesir, was buried actually in Ireland, and the British Israelites believe that the tomb of the prophet Jeremiah is also to be found in Ireland, at Loucrew in County Meath, and believe him to have brought Tara to the coronation stone, the stone of fall, upon which Irish chieftains were crowned. However, when the anecdotes such as this are breached, scholars are quick to say that there may have been commerce between Egypt and Phoenicia and Ireland after all. The majority of this commerce, though, is constantly tried to be dated at 600 BC through 700 AD. Jeremiah fled thither after the siege of Jerusalem, carrying away the treasures of the temple, such as the ark, the scepter of the Druid, or scepter of David, the Urim and Thummim, which are black or white stones that they use for divination and seeing what God thought, and others. Some persons at this day affect to believe that the hill of Tara might be yet found in these memorials of Judaism, and hope to recover thence David's harp, carried to Ireland by Jeremiah, and the Princess Scotia, which Scotland's named after, daughter of the Pharaoh Akhenaten. This was James Bonwick, Irish Druids and Old Irish Religions, written back in 1894. So again, this is another case where in the Wayback Machine people had this going on and were figuring it out. It really seems that if you look into it, people quit talking about it because of directives. And then, lo and behold, slowly but surely, it fades off into memory, and people seem to have lost the memories of where it was and where people were at ancient times and who actually did what. Is it really that far-fetched to suppose Egyptian theology, particularly that of Upper Egypt, to be of Western in origin? We do not think so, as Augustus Le Plongeon and Ignatius Donnelly, Barry Fell, and others have shown. The Irish traveled to America long before other groups and were plying their trade and building settlements hundreds of years before the arrival of Columbus. There's been a lot of videos made, and I've made some myself, on pre-Columbian contact in the Americas. Ancient Sumerians, all kinds of things, and a lot of people have said, those pyramids and those mounds that are built there can actually be accredited to those actual people that we're looking at. They even say they inherited it, and it goes back, and then you're like, well, who came before them? We go to the Olmecs and keep going, and how does that work? Because they were only in one small portion, and then there's these other people that we're unaware of, apparently. And in recent times, we found through LiDAR and things that you can go over a swath of that jungle rainforest that they're cutting down at a rate of, oh my God, and under it, all over the place, are ancient settlements. Some of them are huge. One that I did a video on about a year and a half ago that they found off doing that LiDAR is the size of London. Well, London in the 1900s is, I think, the way it was described. Gigantic city, though. One that it's hard to see all the way across. We surmise that these historical Celt-type people visited the Americas and were following in the footsteps of great mariners who had ventured forth even in earlier times. Their mounds and megaliths bear inscriptions and dedications to the gods of light. Many Algonquin Indian words are identical, not only to Gaelic words, but Egyptian ones. There's been things where they found Hebrew writing, but then they found out that's not Hebrew, that's Phoenician, and everybody put it back in the damn box. For a moment, they really wanted to show it. See how that works? Hold on. The image of the Egyptian Eye of Ra has been found near to images of the Irish staghorn god Cernunnos. Prehistoric Irish designs have been discovered in Oklahoma and Florida. and proof of sea voyages between Europe, Britain, and South and North America have come to light, revealing just how inaccurate the official records of history are. You know, the whole idea there was that they had this land bridge that was just this momentary gap that they could get across, and that was the only time, and nobody before could have ever. And all of these thoughts that came with it, and they're the Clovis people, and Clovis first. And I've made quite a few videos about how Clovis ain't first. In fact, right here near me in a Galt site in Texas, we go back 18,000, and that doesn't fit their model at all. And then you find out haplogroups of people in Wendover Bog, Florida have X haplogroup, and if you look that up or just wiki it, and the picture what it shows you where those people live, they show you these northeastern Indians and people in the Middle East. What's up with that? How could that happen? Are you telling me a bunch of Indians came over to the Mediterranean and fathered into something that became... No, let's look at that the other way, because he'll talk about it here shortly. That things can always go one way, and they're eager to do it, but they can't seem to go another way, and then over time we come to find out it was going that way. Just like the zodiac, it all spins this way, and people don't realize that while it's spinning this way real fast and on a daily axis, it's actually slowly backing up the other way. Yeah. So, that the Irish, Gauls, and Phoenicians and Egyptians frequented the east coast of North America and that they were in close relation to one another proves that they had close dealings in Europe and Asia. All doubt upon the matter is dispelled once we objectively examine the evidence. But you got to put it all together. Each little thing, they think like they can dismiss it, but whenever you put it all together, then you say, well, you could probably dismiss some of this somehow, but whenever you start to get evidence like this point, it gets to the point where you can't kind of put it all on, well, if that glove don't fit, you must have quit. That doesn't work that way. There's too much other bullshit, like even genetics and blood type and all these things, so no. But, so Egyptians, again, back to this connection, Maat. It is a goddess of pretty much like Nike, if you will, or victory, and having the scales of justice. Maat is truth, straightforward truth, not some jealous lie and we was this or that and the other. It's straightforward truth and utilizing truth. Strangely, that T at the end of Ma'at can be a TH sound, and that end ends up being Ma'ath. The mother of Thoth was the goddess of mathematics, geometry, harmony, balance, and justice. She was known as Mary, yes, from which we get the biblical Mary, along with other relations that I've shown you, such as water itself. When we think of things of being on the water, they are maritime. She's the mother of Jesus, though. Maat is considered the mother of the pharaohs, who embodied her principles and officiated for her. She's considered to be like the all-mother, like the all-father in a situation. They all come from this, right? So when we talk about lineage that come from the pre-dynastic all the way through, they're embracing that at the earliest point that we can see it and carrying it all the way through. There isn't some sneaky people getting in somehow. Doesn't work that way. An Irish name for Druidism is Mythos, and that includes the Egyptian dual called Thoth and Maat inside of itself. The eye of the great God, the eye of the God of glory, the eye of the King of hosts, the eye of the King of life, shining upon us through time and tide, shining upon us gently and without stint. Glory to thee, O splendid sun. Glory to thee, O sun, face of the God of life. This is an ancient Irish hymn. Yeah. and showing you again that they had sun worship going on. And it sounds like, until we tell you it's an ancient Irish hymn, that it's got to be out of the Bible somewhere, doesn't it? And it also sounds like you're sun worshiping, and it might as well end with the god Ra. But it doesn't, does it? Egypt is highly unusual in that the early craftsmanship and construction from Old Kingdom are the finest, and the quality of dimensions of each monument reduces from then on throughout the following millennia. Ralph Ellis noticed this and wrote of it in the book Eden in Egypt. But I've made videos about it, and a lot of people have made that. The one key thing that we can point out is the point of perfection, of course, but also that, the earliest of times all of a sudden whipping into making pyramids. And yet we know now that the pyramids are built with sacred geometry and this advanced mathematics that works off all kinds of things and actually incorporates the circumference of the earth and the difference of the fact that the earth has a bulge in it, in the center of it, where it's just a little bit bigger. Well, they made a slightly off pyramid, just exactly that same amount too. And so there starts to be compounding things, and they try to write it off to this day. Literally, they just go, that must be a coincidence that it comes out to multiplying that exact number times 432,000, which is that sacred number that's always in geometry, and it end up being exactly the circumference of the earth, which is actually more accurate than anything we had until we had modern satellites. How are these people pulling this off? It's amazing. In fact, whenever you talk about how amazing Egypt is, it's just like Sumeria, where people go, it's amazing. They started agriculture and started writing and stuff. And it's like, no, they had advanced geometry, trigonometry, all kinds of things. And this really isn't like popcorn. They had it going on. And now we find that, oh, they weren't the people that created agriculture. There's a lot of people in that Fertile Crescent that did. In fact, some of those groups way back in the Wayback Machine brought already domesticated animals and grains in from the Levant area, and this started and heralded Egypt with the local Caucasian population that was already there. But one big part that's in all of this that I show a lot of times are these ancient vases that they have where they're made, where they look similar in style and everything to the pottery that they have there. But they're made out of a granite type mixed stone, quite often Dalmatian pattern over it with different types, and yet they're made to a perfection and so smooth. And they found 40,000 of them. This isn't, and they're all made incredibly, along with the schist disc and all of these things. Those vases are about impossible to make in a modern day, even if you have a lathe set up and everything. And to get them to that point, and then if you look at what we supposedly say they had before, right in the very first dynasties, where they found these buried at, it doesn't make a correlation to these people are just now figuring out, oh, well, now we can plant things in rows, and whenever it floods, we might use that. No, it's been going on long, long before that, and there, but other places too. Just this year, actually, I showed where they found a settlement from ancient times. It's rounding on 30,000 years old, but yet what's sitting on it there, they found a bread making type grinding wheel. That better quit that shit. A grinding wheel for bread, corn and stuff, and then they even analyzed it and could find some remnants of it. And these people were making bread and doing things at this time. So when the Sumerians talk about, long, long ago, before bread was even broken and all these type things, are they talking about just a few hundred years ago, or are they talking about thousands and thousands of years before? At that time, did they have amnesia? It doesn't seem like it. What it seems more like is that they knew more than they let on, and would ever write down on anything so certain people may not know. And it was things that were kept secret, like magic and so on. And we've talked about this in many aspects. And because of that secretive effect, it has to be pulled out. Yeah, you have to unravel it like fabric. It's pretty tough, but once you get it going right, it just seems to all fall apart, doesn't it? So when we look at these temples, it says these temples were not dedicated to any particular monarch nor any particular god. They were instead dedicated to the observation and the study of the universe. They're astrology setups. They were set up to where certain stars land at certain times and everything. Well, that was the season of whenever it rains usually and all these things. And yeah, the nature of land, the nature of it all. They were working with that. The people that we think of in our mind that were naturistic and stuff are like the elves. Why don't we find any remnants back in, well, once we go back to a certain point before Neolithic stonework, everybody was making things out of wood and it just doesn't last. You'd be lucky to find post holes and so on. We talked about that in a video recently. The original theology and ritual of the megalithic priesthood demanded that there were no idols, no imagery, and no inscriptions, as the design of these monuments was not supposed to give away the identity of the architects or the builders. And we find that. And a lot of people say a lot of the Egyptian stuff was written upon later, especially those black boxes and all of these things that they find, those diorite boxes that are so well made, and yet the stuff that's on them, the inscriptions and so on, they look terrible. Almost like somebody pecked it out to start on the work, but then didn't finish it correctly. Let me get that back a little bit better right here for y'all here. So a lot of people have noticed that all of a sudden out of nowhere there are these people that had helped out these places. You can call it the Shimsu horror, but we find that same iconography through Samaria too. So then we can talk about the nine, the sacred nine, the seven Apkallu priests that always go around and do these things and herald civilization and bring you another layer of the onion and help make things work out. Come in, see what's going on, and go, you know what you need next. I ain't going to give you all this at one time. It'd screw everything up probably. You're just going to work through it like other people already did, because you can't have it all at once. Here we go. After close study of Egyptian relics and paintings in museums, private collections, and after perusal of the works of leading Egyptologists and excavators, researchers Mary Sutherland, who was unable to account for what she discovered, managed to catalog a few key examples concerning the anomaly of Western European presence in the land of the Nile. So just her, as an Egyptologist, looking back through the things after seeing like, oh, there's some redheads and stuff mentioned on here, and go back through them, and every time she'd find one, make a note on that pad here, and here's a list of them. Only the mummies of very few pharaohs have survived, though, to the 20th century now, but a proportion of these are blonde. A large proportion of these are blonde. Some other are red-headed. If we took the amount that we have now and looked at it, they have a higher percentage of blonde and red hairs than even Western Europe, really. Yeah, but then again, one thing that I lost, like almost a year ago now, whenever I had all of that articles pulled up and was ready to go, and 40 articles worth of stuff, some of them were multiples, and I lost it all and had to restart again and reset, was where they had a few different recollections of people opening mummies, like a mummy party, because they used to have them in England and stuff whenever this all became effect. And it's the reason we all have the desire for this now, was all this, wow, look at this crazy stuff and all these things that went along with it, and woo, right? But they opened him up, and this one had scarlet hair. This one that they opened up, and he was mad because it was supposed to be a lady, or supposed to be a man, and it was a lady, and she had auburn hair. And so on, you know, and blah, blah, blah. There was a group of them. Grafton Smith mentions the distinct red hair of the 18th dynasty mummy, Hinutmehet. So we might want to look that up, see if we got a good picture of Henut Mehet. The Egyptians left us many paintings and statues of blondes and redheads. Amenhotep III's tomb painting shows him having light red hair. Also, his features are, of course, quite Caucasian. That whole usage there, every time you see them, that's Caucasian phenotype. Every single Egyptian one you find shows that. You can look at the depictions of Nubians, and then you can see the difference radically in that. People sometimes get confused because they see red ochre males and pale females. Whenever you realize that that's in Minoan art and Etruscan art, Mitanni, and the Greek art of the time, where men are shown drawing in red ochre and then females pale, maybe you won't be so confused. Nobody's confused about the Greeks and everything, but somehow there gets to be confusion, or people try to use that as a, like, oh, ambiguous, and it's not ambiguous with anybody else using it. No, it's also a sunblock. Look into it. Red ochre is actually a form of sunblock. Let's continue. A farm scene around 2000 BC in the tomb of a nobleman of Mekhetre shows a redhead. We're going to mention a lot of these through here, and you've actually, if you've been watching my stuff, seen some videos where we go through a tomb. And it's cool just to look at them and everything, but whenever you get to look at a tomb versus what some people have said, and you're like, well, who are all these pale people on here? And you can tell they're Caucasian phenotypes, and oh my God, there's some blonde-haired people mixed in here and redheads, but yet they're still just as red ochre as all the other guys because they're workers. Am I confused, or is that just like in Etruscans and all of that? It's just like that. The tomb of Mena in the 18th dynasty at western Thebes shows blonde girls on it. The Horus god is usually depicted as white or paler. He's very white in the Book of the Dead of Lady Chetawebshet, 21st dynasty, found in the Egyptian Museum at Cairo, and in a lot of depictions. You'll find it both ways, actually, where he is dark or not. A lot of times you'd think that he'd be drawn dark. You'd think pharaohs would be light too, and like I mentioned, well, they draw them dark because he's in action. He's making things happen. You think he's just sitting on his ass? There's things going on, and so he's the great warrior of all, the god. He's making things happen. So let it be written, so let it be done. Women are drawn pale, though, because at this time people are able to make everything work, and much better than it ever was before, and here we go, and everybody's fed fantastic, and she can watch my children and doing stuff, and without having to toil out in the sun, she doesn't get real tanned. Yeah, you can find that in the Bible where the girl tries to beg forgiveness for being tanned, actually, and people try to use that in a weird way sometimes, but they don't finish off what it says. It says, do not look upon me, O Israel, for I am dark yet comely. What? Now, some people try to use that in false ways, but next line, for the sun hath looked upon me. What? Oh, that means I'm tanned. She goes on and tells you that her brothers force her to work in the fields and everything, and what's actually going on here is she's begging forgiveness for actually having a tan, for having to work the fields. The eye of Horus, the so-called Wadjet eye, is always blue, and in fact Wadjet is blue. So whenever they say the Wadjet eye, they're really saying the blue eye of Horus. The Greek author Plutarch in the 22nd chapter of Dis Ilde Osiride of Osiris states that the Egyptians thought Horus to be fair-skinned and the god Seth to be of ruddy complexion. I've already shown you where that works out, and Horus is thought to have been fair-skinned and perhaps light-haired. But the god Seth, who is Typhon and works out that way, and is Seth of the Bible, by the way, and Set had red hair. And it also is the reason we call a sunset, where it looks real red whenever it goes down, for Set and Seth Peribsen is who it originally correlated to. So I've got a video on that, and it'll show you a picture of an aardvark guy with red hair. But Seth, or Set, was the only one that could take over the Apep snake, because, kind of like in the Jungle Book, it had this mysterious power of being able to hypnotize people, and something weird would happen, he could throw it all off. But Seth was the one that could make it all happen. The mummies of Ramses II and Prince Yah have fine silky yellow hair. The mummy of another pharaoh, Tuthmose, and light chestnut-colored hair. Microscopic examination showed that the hair roots contain natural red pigments, that during his younger days Ramses the Great had been a redhead. That's been well proven. And of course, all their hair is all Caucasian type hair. In fact, if you go to the wiki on hair right now, I don't know if they'll change it because of feelings, but if you go to the wiki on hair, about 3/4 of the way down on the right hand side, it'll show you a Caucasian guy with curly hair, real curly hair, and it starts to describe different types of curly hair and straight hair and what hair types are and everything. And then for the description of curly hair, like the Egyptians, it shows you these blonde and strawberry blonde wigs, one of which is a skull cap that was actually directly, still has the skin on it where it's attached to the person's head. And what they mention is that whenever they found that person that had that hair had a dark wig on over it and had put on that. So that was like the trend going on. A very striking painting of a yellow-haired man hunting from a chariot can be found in the tomb of Userhet, royal scribe of Amenophis. Let's just go with that too. The yellow-haired man is Userhet, the same tomb as paintings of blonde soldiers. The tomb of Mena also have a wall painting showing a blonde man supervising 2 dark-haired workers scooping grain. Are any of them black? No. That's just different colors of hair. And we won't be like, oh, if they have a tan and dark hair, then, but people try that. Time Life Books put out a volume called Ramses II the Great. It has a good picture of the blonde mummy of Ramses II. Another picture can be found in the book X-Raying the Pharaohs. The picture on the jacket is the cover, shows his yellow hair. It's kind of yellowish red. It had some henna put onto it, and you can't get a exact yellow out of it. You get a yellowy orange. The funerary stele inscribed with stone slab of priest Rime clearly shows him as having red hair. A painting of a mother of Pharaoh Amenhotep IV, 18th dynasty, reveals that she had blonde hair, blue eyes, and a rosy complexion. I may have to look up that. Painting of the mother of Pharaoh Amenhotep. Princess Renofri, a daughter of the pharaoh Tutmosis III of the 18th dynasty, is depicted as a blonde in a wall painting that was recorded in the 19th century by Italian Egyptologist Ippolito Rossellini. In 1929, archaeologists discovered the mummy of a 50-year-old queen, Mariette Amun, another daughter of Tutmosis III. The mummy has wavy, light brown, chestnut hair. Pardon me. Paintings of blondes and redheads have been found all among the tombs at Thebes. Well, the nobles in the Thebes are Thuya and Yuya, and I've just done a video where it shows you that and the connectives, and they even have their genetics where they were testing out if King Tut had interbred and so on, or if he had genetic defects and clubfoot, what's going on with all that. And in doing so, they got the haplogroups of the people, and Akhenaten and Tut are R1b. Their mtDNA is K, but Thuya and Yuya, he's G2, she's K also. Paintings of blondes and redheads have been found all over these tombs at Thebes, though. Well, there was a bunch of blondes at Thebes. Not necessarily. All over the place. A lot of the people that would be having black-looking wigs on in the art would not really be necessarily dark-headed. Amenhotep III looks Northern European in his stature. There's a picture I've shown quite a few times of him where he has that slight overbite and he looks somewhat like a European man. Blonde woman was painted at the tomb of Desher Ka Ra Seneb in Thebes. A model of a ship from 2500 BC is manned by 5 blonde sailors. They didn't have their wigs that day? Maybe not. The goddess Nut is painted as white and blonde. Quite often. Look it up. N-U-I-T. Nut. 2 statues from about 2570 BC found in the tombs at Medum show Prince Rahotep and his wife Nofret that I've shown quite often. In fact, did just earlier in here. And give me a moment, I'll go up and show you Nofret. He has light green stones for eyes. She has violet blue stones. It's not really true. Depends on what angle you get at. He has kind of a hazel eye, which is blue, but it gets these green overtones if you shift right. Her eyes are blue, but they have a violet tone whenever they get off to the side. And both of them kind of look gray if you get at an angle. It's such a weird, unique thing. It's odd. Let's see if I'll just go up here and show you her real quick. It doesn't show him next to her. A lot of the paintings that they show from the other side, from the right looking left, because his statue is on her right. She's on his left. Right? Right. This is her, and you can see how pale she is. This is from the 4th dynasty. The one on the right is a blonde wig that's all clasps and from middle dynasties and stuff. But she has those crystal blue eyes, as you can see. There's really no question on what ethnicity she is in any way, shape, or form. And back then, not the pharaohs drawn godlike and perfect. The people and quite a lot of the scribes, they tried to capture what they actually look like. Here's another weird fluke, though, guys. Out of nowhere, all of a sudden, their statuary gets pretty damn good. And then all of a sudden, pow, the Greeks come on with this realism and musculature and things that just looks like perhaps Medusa stared him in the eye, and then they just took and set it over here on a shelf. Doesn't it? Got a video about that and the reality of Medusa and so on, and the Medes and other connections that are there. Let's go back to where we were. Sorry about this quick going up and down here, but wanted to show you that. So, that's Rahotep and Nofret. That was Nofret we were looking at. A painting from Ateti's tomb at Saqqara shows a very Nordic-looking man with blonde hair. By the way, now I'd like to mention to you that up top right here, where I've already got all these things loaded up for other videos, I've got 2 other sites. One of them lists 70 different ones. The other one is 50-something. Not all of them overlap, and some of them might be some of these that are listed in here too. But each one of those has all these listings of people like, hey, look here at this exact tomb. There's blonde-haired people on the wall. Now look here at this tomb. There's blonde-haired people. Look at this. Look at that. Painting from a Teti tomb at Saqqara shows a very Nordic-looking man with blonde hair. A painting at the tomb of Marasank II at Giza is from about 2485 BC, shows white skin and red hair. I thought about trying to type in each one of these or copy and paste it and throw it in there and do it under DuckDuckGo images and see if we can see something that there's Marasank. Oh, right here. Here she is. Yeah. But I think we're going to see this one here later. Marasank is actually the granddaughter or daughter of Cheops or Khufu. Paintings of people with red hair and blue eyes were found at the tomb of Bakht in Beni Hassan, and many other tombs at Beni Hassan have paintings of individuals with blonde and red hair as well as blue eyes. They're not individualized at all, but some of them showing blue eyes on them also, but blonde individuals, redheads too, along with the darker brown hair, of course, and that's what you normally see in Europe. It's not really much different than people see today, but an article in leading British arthropological journals states that many mummies have dark reddish brown hair. Professor Vacher de la Pogue described a blonde mummy found at El Amra, which he says has the face and skull measurements of a typical Gaul or a Saxon. I think he probably studied those people, and he goes, looks like I'm looking at a Gaul here in Egypt. What's up with that? The book of History of Egyptian Mummies mentions a mummy with reddish-brown hair. A blonde mummy was found at Camomil, along with many chestnut-colored ones. The very first pharaoh Narmer, known as Menes, appears to be very Caucasian. In fact, you look at that Narmer palette, and it's kind of weird. You talk about Memphis and things in here, well, he kind of looks like Elvis, and he's got a lot of burning love for you, baby. He's got that etching look and appearance in some of those palettes right there and the pictographs that are on them. To a lot of people, they've made mention of it before, but then again, that also has that same look as the Statue of Liberty. In fact, in an old video I did, it's like, that looks like Elvis, doesn't it? And in the picture, it really did. I mean, crazy. And it, of course, that was the first inclination before they changed it, and then French sent it to America and so on. The ever-important Isis was the fact of one of these goddesses known by the title of Mary, or Mary. That goddesses were beloved by Mary is obvious from the enigmatic spell, an actual spell that invokes the goddess greatly beloved with red hair, or her who is greatly beloved, the red-haired. D.M. Murdoch writes this in his book, Jesus of Egypt. The mummy of a young Amarna prince, which is discovered in an annexed tomb of Amenhotep III, supports a very long, luxuriant side lock of hair. Strangely enough, this young prince was not only hairy, but he has hair with also a ruddy brown color. So again, it was that darkened red hair, not the ginger look off of it that we quite often see. But he thought, apparently there's something wrong with this idea, like he was so young he still had a side lock. But also at times it was lucky that you even had a side lock. A lot of times they would shave themselves. The priest would shave themselves twice a day. Here we're looking into the eyes of an ancient Egyptian scribe. In fact, for a long time this was only known as the unknown seated scribe. But now they figured out basically who he is. By having all the other scribes identified, they figured out which one he must be. Many of the officials, courtiers, and priests representing the upper class of Egyptian society, but not the royalty, looked strikingly like modern Europeans, especially long-headed ones. Professor Carlton Kuhn, The Races of Europe. And Kuhn is pretty famous, along with a lot of these others that we're mentioning here. You can see that they have this copper-rimmed eye. The neat thing, too, is that the white part of the eye is actually a stone that they found that has little pink veins in it, just like your eyes do, and they chip that out and use that. But the wicked part of it is that these eyes follow you around the room, and they've made the little dot, the pupil type effect of it. He's not at the right angle, or this guy's get even bluer. They're one of the bluest ones if you get in the right shot. Looks like it was done with a flash, which pretty much eats that away, I'm sure. But these eyes are like real human eyes, and then they separated the pupil back so it has the appearance of it and everything. And this goes from the earliest dynasties, as we're seeing here, through about the 18th dynasty, and then pretty much quit. Or actually the 12th dynasty, there's another pinpoint at 18th, and with Nefertiti has one of these crystal blue eyes left in it. Some people said, well, they had a few of them left over and used them for special. Well, Nefertiti was very special, very beautiful, and to recreate her statue correctly, they did so. Everybody thought she was the most beautiful in the world and everything, and a lot of people were touting it like crazy. And then whenever the new thing came out and the recreation of her, oh, they went crazy. And then they said, well, she looks just like Karen from accounting. And they don't realize how true that statement is. Above the face of a scribe, though, from the term of Seraphim Saqqara, left is one that I've shown quite a bit. It's a bas-relief showing blonde-haired Queen Hetepheres II, daughter of the king Cheops of the early 4th dynasty, creator of that pyramid that we're talking all about. A lot of people have made comments about this. I remember when I was a kid, there was all the new wave stuff, and people were getting shoulder pads and everything. And first time we ever saw this, they made a big joke about how, God, she took shoulder pads to a new level. And you see them spiked up on the edges. The thing that was real neat about this, though, and I don't know if it shows up in the picture there, if it gets small enough, you don't see it. If it gets big enough, you see it easily. What they've done is taken yellow ochre and make her hair like a blonde, but because she was strawberry-ish, so they didn't paint it red, they didn't paint it yellow. They painted it yellow, and then they took and put little bitty thin lines of red on it. They're going across it, but they left the front part out of it as if she was looking into the sun and there was a glare on it. It's pretty neat. Left King Horus, 1783 to 1633 BC, with gleaming blue-gray eyes. They actually get bluer than that. I use that same picture where you can kind of see the right eye's more blue than the left. If you get around a little more in front of him, his eyes are extremely blue. They show another shot that's real famous of him having his headdress on. This is a Ka statue, and it's made of the sacred wood that we've talked about so often. And her arms are placed up in a praying or praising type mode. In that picture, you see how blue his eyes are. This other thing that's over here is like a Shabti type of doll and everything. And it looks very much like what we just saw in Nofret. Even the blue eyes on her. A little bit healthy looking, if we could say. So, a red-haired corpse here, it says, was found dating from the pre-dynastic period named Ginger. Click here for more. And if you click on that, we'll go to another site or another page they've got where they're showing Ginger, the pre-dynastic Ghibelline mummy, who may have actually been involved in the point of the starting of Egypt. In those wars that they got together and then finally got together with it. A lot of people looking at the dating that they have on some of these kings lists go, man, this went on for a long time before this. You're just marking this one where they came together, but they were, well, we never can find out if they were truly together before that, so we're not even going to refer to that, and we're going to pretend it's fairy tale time. Well, they said it goes on to Shimsu Hor for 10,000 years, and that they were the people that brought it up, but you're not going to even pay attention to anything they say about that mythology. Real keen to recreate and keep putting out the idea of Osiris and being chopped up into pieces and put back together, and she had sex with it, and now all these weird ideas, but aren't going to go off with this idea that they said some other stuff. It's kind of strange. Pharaoh Userkaf, shown up here in the top left, 2465 to 2458 BC, was an important king of the 5th dynasty. So here we are at the earliest dynasties, and you look at his phenotype that's on him, and it's quite easy to tell. And to me, he looks like that guy that, well, he kind of looks like the guy that played in The Lord of the Rings, doesn't he? He's got a mitre cap on. Don't let that and the makeup around the eyes throw you off. His title means his soul is strong. His features are distinctly Caucasian. Notably, Userkaf was the first king of Egypt to begin the building of solar temples to the god Ra. The most striking are Saqqara and Abusir, where they have that graveyard we were talking about before. Userkaf's origins are considered uncertain. He may have been the son of the high priest of Memphis, or even Heliopolis, where some of the grandest solar temples stood. Egyptian artwork and sculpture reached a peak during this regency. Where are we at here? I'm going to do one more and then we'll switch to the next one. Right in the middle of Khafre. Pharaoh Khephren of the 4th dynasty, 2650 to 2632 BC. He was the successor of Khufu, who is believed to have been the pharaoh who commissioned the building of the Great Pyramid at Giza. Khepren's features are clearly Caucasian, not African. And by African, we don't mean Caucasian, North African, endemic people. We're talking about sub-Saharans, of course. The profile of Khephren, this pharaoh's face appears on the Egyptian sphinx that stands in the Giza plateau. Evidence shows that he had the textured face that does not match the body, which means that the face was recarved, probably more than once. He thinks it's the face of a female. A lot of other people say it was a lion or it was a dog. symbolizing that. But in any case, we believe the face of Kephren was deliberately defaced to conceal that his strikingly Caucasian features. A solar cult dignitary, his title was He Who Appears Like Ra. And here we go to part 4. It's in your top left-hand corner, and we'll start off right here. We'll see you there. Leave a comment down below if you would, or come back. Peace.